Okay, I think we can start. Hello and welcome to my talk. Today I will tell you about UI design system, what it is and how can you use it in your game. In my agenda today, we will talk about what is the UI design system, how to create one. We will go through the elements of the UI design system, and at the end I will tell you a little bit more about how you can use it for documentation. And of course we will have some time for a Q&A. Two more digressions. I know it would be super cool to show you the Figma and how it works, but I decided it would be too stressful for me. We will just have the images. You can always ask me after, and I will show you something more. And the second digression is you can, of course, take photos. If anything is interesting for you, you can take the photos of the slides. So a little bit about myself. My name is Marta. Currently, I am UI artist at People Can Fly for over a year. 2 years ago, I graduated from the UX design and product design at SWPS University. And then there I was sneaking up at mainstream UX and was checking what can I take from the mainstream UX and use it in game design and how to do it. Other than that, I am over 10 years in game development, and before being a UI artist, I did a range of different art-related stuff, including UI. And also, I have a Master of Arts degree in game design, but the artistic part. This is my first big event for 2 years now, and so I might be a little rusty, but I think it will be okay. Okay, so now you know something about me. I want to know a little bit about you. So please raise your hand, people who are from the UI or UX related places. Okay, thank you very much. And now raise the hand if you know what the UI design system is. Oh, there are some people. Nice, great. But still, I think you will learn something about it anyways. And if you don't know anything, you will for sure learn something new. Okay, so let's start with a definition. This is a very raw one, but a design system is a set of standards to manage design at a scale by reducing redundancy while creating a shared language and visual consistency across different pages and channels. So making it more simple, design system is like a rule book, but the biggest difference between design system and the rule book is that it contains the components that can be reused, that are pre-built, and because they can be reused, it makes our work much quicker. So it's not just the rules, but also the things you can use in your workflow. So to compare it with something other in game development, I think it's like when level design have the metrics and the components that are reused. This is something similar. Or for example, if the character artist creates the NPC characters and also has some guidelines and so ready components to create one, this is something similar, but for UI. Okay, so now some examples. This is the QR code and the link to the library of different mainstream UX system examples. You can go through it and see some of them. Here on my slides are some that you might probably know. I hope the QR code works. You can let me know. So the first one is Humor Interface. It's from Apple, and you probably know it if you are using any Apple interfaces. The second one is Audi Design from Audi and their automotive interfaces. And the last one is from Atlassian. You probably know it if you use Jira or Confluence in your company. Now I have two big examples, and the first one is Material Design. It's probably one of the most popular design systems. It's the one made by Google, and it's also reused in all the Google interfaces, programs, and softwares. And it can also be reused if you're designing an app. It's very easy to access because they have all the files in Figma. They have some files in some files of the code and programming, so you can also check that. I think it's very good to know other design systems because you can see how they are built and you can inspire by that. You can see what elements are there. and get some inspiration. And for me, it's very useful because sometimes I am not a native English speaker, so sometimes I just don't know how to name an element of UI, and then I can check and design systems that what they are named and keep the naming from that. So there are some more examples of how the material design system is built. You can see how many informations there are, how many versions of, for example, icons there are, and you can see on the tabs that there's not just overview, but also the guidelines for spacing, guidelines for how to use it and in which situations, and also accessibility guidelines. And the second one of my favorite examples is Duolingo design system. I really like it because it's playful but very strict. They have a lot of strict rules for their identity, even for the writing. What character of writing do they want in their products? Of course, the colors, because they are a very big part of Duolingo branding. And I love that they have the very strict rules for the information, for the illustration, how they want to be made, how they want to have, what feeling they want to convey. And I think it's very interesting that they have it in their design system. Okay, so once we know what design system is, let's wonder if it's something for your team. Let's look at some pros and cons, starting with pros. So primary benefit of design system is the speed. So as I mentioned before, you had some ready-made components that you can reuse, and it makes your work with the screen or any mockups you need much faster. You just take something that already exists and use it the way you need it in your screen. Second advantage is that you have unified visual language, which is the plus for both user and the team. For user, it's a plus because the user have all the elements in the same place, all the elements that look the same, have the same purpose, so it's easier to them to realize what to do in a given environment. And for the team, it's also very viable because you already have some decisions made. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to make unnecessary discussions because you already have it figured out. Another one is the focus, and it's also very similar to the previous one. You have those simple things figured out, so you as a team and your team can focus on the more complex things. You already have established the look of your buttons, so you can focus on how they should be arranged on the screen, and you don't have to, again, speak more about how the button should work. Another one is the source of truth, and it's very helpful because you have everything in one place, and if you manage your design system well, it's always up to date. So, for example, and it's very helpful in my work if you want to check in-game the screens that are already implemented and compare them with how they should be looking on our mockups. We have all the mockups, all the screens in one place in our design systems. It's very helpful. Another one is consistency. So the consistency keeps the UX experience seamless. Everything looks the same, and the visual appearance is also consistent. All the screens look like they are part of one ecosystem. And the last cons I have here is communication, and this is the perfect thing for the team. So it's easier to communicate when you have everything in one place. Sometimes you don't even have to communicate because you already see what you should do, what rules you should be following, or what styles to use. It's all there. And it's also good for the communication outside of the team. For example, with our director, you have everything in one place. So if he or she or they want to check the up-to-date thing or the current thing you're using, you can just check the design system. And it can be also helpful for the marketing team. So marketing assets would want to base on the UI of the game. So it's easier for them to check the assets, the components they can use, and it's much easier for them to access those. But this is not a solution for everyone and every team. The design system have some cons as well. And even though on the previous screen you saw the speed, it also takes time to set up the design system. So at the beginning, it might be very time-consuming. And the speed comes later. So setting up all the components or the rules, all the styles you need might take a lot of time. The second one is maintaining. It takes maintaining the design system to work. So, for example, in my tasks, there's always an additional piece that makes the update of the design system. So every time I do the mockup, I need to update the design system so it's up to date, but it's also an advantage in future. So for me, it works. And the last con is onboarding. So every team member that will use design system will have to be on board to the design system. So they know how to use it, they know where to find some elements and what rules there are. So they have to know it, and it also takes a little bit of time. Even though it seems like there are much fewer cons than pros, the cons still might be a deal breaker. So as I said, it's not for everyone probably, but still, even if it's not 100% a solution for you, you can maybe take some parts of it for your next UI or UI design work. Even in my quite a big UX team, it wasn't very easy to introduce a design system, but we did it, and I'm very happy to work with it. Okay, so wherever you decide it's for you or not, let's take a little look at how to create a design system. Even though it seems like it might be quite complex things to do, the mainstream UX already have some strategies to how to start. And one of them is atomic design. Atomic design is a design methodology inducted by Brad Frost that advocates breaking down user interfaces into their smallest, most fundamental building blocks. I will explain it. So, this is how the atomic design works. As in the definition, it's breaking the pieces of interface into the smallest structures and making the bigger one made of the smaller one. So, for example, the smallest unit of the design system are atoms, and for my game design purposes, those are textures. So, for example, this is the texture for the button, its frame, an icon, and this is the very basic thing. The second one are the molecules, and we translate it to the game design as widgets. So this is the button made of those textures. So it has the background, the frame, and the icon, probably some typography. The third one are organisms. We call those in game design panels, and this, for example, is the list of the buttons you already made. The fourth one, and templates. So this is, and it also translates to templates. So it's something that you will reuse, and for example, this is a template of the screen that you have a lot of buttons here, but you want them to always be in the same place, to have a specific header and specific footer, and this is a template you will reuse on different kinds of the screens in your game. And the fifth one are pages, and we translate it to screens. So this is again the place you keep all your screens together. So, and they are all made of the panels and templates you already made before. Okay, so basically those atomic design elements plus the styles and plus rules you establish are the very basic of the design system. This is a very good base to start with. And we can create them in Figma. And why Figma? So the first reason why Figma is very personal. I actually really like when the lecture have something very specific, and Figma is something I work every day with, so I decided that it's something I can introduce you the most, and this is something I can show you around. But there are more advantages. So the first one is that Figma is free, so it's actually very accessible for everyone. The very basic plan is free. This is actually the industry standard, and it's not only in game design, but also in mainstream UX. So it's very good to use it because it might be very helpful in your other projects. You can also omit it when you change the work. It has very wide range of functions. The basic ones are, of course, the design and the prototyping, but it also have some tools for gaming, like the mirror board, but for Figma. And for the last one is, for example, Figma slides. And this presentation is actually made in Figma as well, because why not? Another advantage is community, because Figma is so popular, it has very wide or very big community. And it's very good because you can just ask your questions and get your answers very quickly because the community is so big. They're creating there a lot of tutorials, a lot of plugins you can reuse, and it's very helpful. And the last one, and it's very interesting for us as we wanted to create a design system, it's very good at maintaining the library. Once you create your library and publish things to the library, they are updating everywhere, so it's very good to keep your design system in. Oh, and here on the screen, there are some Figma pages I made to create the example of the design system. We have our general guidelines as the first page, UX design rules as the second one, our atomic design elements, which is screen, templates, panels, widgets, and textures, and the last one are styles. This is like the example of how you can arrange it in Figma. Okay, so now, as we know how to organize it, we can analyze the core elements of the design system. So, first of all, are rules. And actually, the rules can be everything you and your team decide that you need there. So, for example, it may be atomic design rules and how you and your team understand that. It can be the pipelines you have. It can be the accessibility rules you have. And here I have a little quick tip for the accessibility. Because there's never time to make things accessible, it's very good to make them accessible by default. So, for example, if you decide what font to use, make the minimal font size, which is accessible, your default minimal font. Or, for example, make some button interaction as accessible as possible by default. Later, you can add your naming convention. And here's another quick tip. It's very good to keep your naming convention the same as you will keep it later in Engine. So make your textures name the same as the engine. This is quite obvious, but also the widgets, the panels, and the screens that name the same as in Engine. It will be helpful for you, but it will also be helpful for the technical people who will implement those things and work with them. And you can also add, for example, rules for your headers and footers. So what font do they use, what colors do they use, what's the spacing from the edge, and so on. Every project is different, and every project might need something else in their rules. Another piece of design system are styles, and there are three major components of the styles: the fonts, colors, and grids. And let's take a look at them. So first one on fonts. In Figma, you can set up your font styles, which you establish the font family, font style. Is it like italic, normal, and underlined, or so on? You can, of course, set the size, and the spacing of the lines. But you don't set up the color. This is a separate style. Once you set it up, you have the list of your fonts you can pick up from, so you don't have to set every parameter separately every time. So it's very useful. While designing your fonts and deciding on the size specifically, it's very good to use something called type scale. This is the proportion that helps you to establish the best difference in sizes for the fonts. So their visual hierarchy is good, and they're very proportional and looks better. And it's also very good to keep the list of your fonts. This is the example from Destiny. But you can also keep it like very clear, not so fancy. It's very helpful for you when you are like designing the screen and want to choose some font but don't want to click every single one. You have all of them listed, and you will just choose that you need this size in this style, and you can choose the font you need, font style you need. And this is also very helpful for the technical people who will implement that. They can actually almost recreate it in Engine, and you will reuse the same font styles in your design system and in the Engine. The second thing in styles are colors, and you can set them up very similarly like the fonts. So you will choose the color. Is it like a full fill or is it a gradient? And you will again have the list of them. You can segregate them very nicely, and it's much easier to pick them up like this. And this is also a very good thing for both font styles and for both color styles. Once you decide you want to change it, for example, you have the established red color for your error information, but later in the production you decided that you wanted to change it to the orange one. You can just change it in one style and it will change in all of the files you have in your design system automatically. So it's much faster and it works very well. And of course you can and you probably should have your palette list. So the same reason for the fonts. It's easier for you to find the color you need, and it's easier for your programmers or technical people to have those color styles in the engine or to find them. And the last thing from the styles I want to talk about is the grid and the padding as well. Some time ago, games used to have the guidelines for the safe spaces, but as far as I know, they are not applying anymore. I was like checking different screens from different games, and I didn't find the next rule that is now the best one. So, but it's still good to have some margins for your game, so all the elements are not just in the edge, but some margins to have. It is also very good to establish the padding, and for me, the best padding I work with is 16 pixels. You can also always divide it into 8 pixels, so by 2, if you need them. In game design, I don't use columns and rows. The screens are just too complicated. They are not like web pages, and they very often need to break the columns and rows rules, so I'm just not using it. If you have any other experience, you can share with me that later. And you have to remember that the grid should help you, not to disturb your work. So it's helpful. It helps you to keep the things consistent. But if it's disturb you, you don't have to stick to it 100%. And this is also how you can set it up in Figma. So I mostly set up the padding, the grid. I set up the margins on the top, on the bottoms, and the right and left. And this is how it works in Figma. So this is the very basic grid. If you save it as a style, you can again switch it on and off on every screen you will put it on, and you can use it, but also you can also like edit it and then also publish it to your library, and it will change everywhere. Yeah. So now let's talk a little bit about the components, and we will go back to our atomic design elements. So the first one are items and /textures. And this is, for example, a background, some button elements, borders, lines, icons, images, and even drop shadow. It's very good to keep even those basic elements components. So it's something you can reuse the instances of this component in your later work. But if you decided that you want your textures to be different color, you will just change the texture component, and it will replace in your later widget, panels, screens, and so on. Another things are molecules. And molecules / widgets are, for example, ready buttons, some card elements, frames, headers, footers, or, for example, key prompts. So the prompts that tell you what button to click, what to do, something you want to do. In this case, it's very good to establish the variants, how many variants of things you need. For example, how many variants of buttons, if it's like active, hover, focus, selected, and so on. And it's, again, very good to establish the naming convention for those styles, because it's very easy to get messy with that. And it's very good to establish it and to have it also the same in your engine with your technical people and in your design system. Next thing is organisms, and these are /panels. For example, these are grids of buttons, menu lists and their variants, navigation tabs, pop-ups, and tooltips. And the next one are templates. So, for example, you can have a templates for all your lobby screens or the screens that have the player menu. You can have the template for the HUD, for option screen, endgame screen, and pop-ups. It's very good in the template to set up the permanent elements. So, for example, if you have the screen with the player menu, that have the tabs on the top. It's good to establish them on the top, that they have the very specific place that is always the same and always with the same margins. It's also very good to set up the headers, the footers. They are always in the same place, and it's very helpful. And they are very cohesive on every screen of the given type. When it comes to templates, there's one more very interesting thing in Figma, that if you make your template a component, you can pick some properties like outside of it. So once you put the instance of this component outside, you have all the properties. For example, what do you want to write in your header? Do you want your header to have a subheader? And you can switch it on and off, which is very helpful. When it comes to the footer, you can decide if you want to have left footer or right footer prompt. You can decide how many of them do you want, and it's all in a single menu, and it's very helpful to set up. And the last element of the design system are pages/screens. And again, it's very, very helpful to keep them all in one place. So you can get back to it whatever you need it to have the library of all of your screens. And the second thing is very helpful for the documentation. So if someone implements them, they can check on the screens what screen do they implement. But also, you can make the documentation in Figma. So once you keep your screens in the library, you can take the instance of this component, place it in the documentation file in Figma, and every time you will update it in your design system, publish the library, and update the library, the screen in the documentation will also be up to date. So it is very, very helpful, and it works quite well. Okay, so now a little bit about how the design system can help in documentation. I already sneak up it a little bit in all of those topics, but I have a little summary for that. And these are the six elements that can be a part of the documentation. So for example, the rules. If you have the rules in your design system, you can also reuse them in your engine, and it's very helpful for your technical people that you have them in one place and they can recreate it in engine. Styles, as we were saying, the fonts, the grid, and the color, all these things can be recreated in engine and reused the same way as you were using it in design system in the engine. Naming convention. I talked about it like 100 times. It's very important to keep things named the same. It helps a lot, both you and your technical people. Keeping living documentation. So the one I was talking about in Figma, for example, that you will keep being updated, it's always up to date, and everything you will change in your design system will also be changed in your documentation. But traditional documentation is also a plus. It's also sometimes needed, for example, for things like padding or things like some information about the states, how they are working, what elements they consist of. Sometimes just your technical people need it on paper. They cannot check everything in Figma, but this is the thing to communicate with them, what their need, and one can Figma and their functions help them with, and what they need the special extra thing for. Yep, and the last thing is developer mode in Figma, which is, I think it might be very helpful. It is only in the paid plan, but there's this switch for the developers to check the things you did, and they can check all the paddings just by clicking the components you made. They can check the paddings, the fonts, their colors, and all the hex documentation for the colors, and probably also some code, but I am not a code person. I am not so sure how helpful it is. Maybe I will get some information and we'll know. Okay. So for now, this is it. For a quick summary, I think that design system is something very well known in mainstream UX, but still not very good known in game design. And I think we can use more and more of it and to share the knowledge of it. And as you saw, it might be a very good thing to keep your all existing elements in one place, and to help with the documentation and communication with your technical people. So that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, we still have plenty of time for it. Thank you. So, any questions? Yes, there's a question. Hello.
Hey, yo, thank you for the talk. And I wanted to ask, what would be by your recommendation on when to actually introduce the design system into the project?
So my recommendation is because first you need to establish your art style. And this is something until you have your art style established, I don't really think it's worth to introduce it to the design system. You can probably do some design system for the wireframes, and it's good when it's separated for the art design system. But I'm pretty sure the first thing you have to do is to establish your art style. So once you establish it, you can break it into those atoms, templates, and so on, and then introduce it or populate your design system with the assets you created.
In terms of accessibility, how are you organizing different versions of the same widget, panel, whatever, to see to have compared visions both for the team which is working on UI and UX, and also for people who may be accessibility consultants or your programmers who are gonna they need to see how this states of accessible and non-accessible, non-accessible is not a good wording, but regular and accessible UI, how they are compared. Are you having the same two versions of each, or you're having separate section of accessible UI?
So, as I mentioned, I have the philosophy to make the accessibility the default, and I think it's the best approach if you can have it. So I think the most important part is to make the design system accessible for the accessibility experts, so they can check it, they can look into it and have their suggestions. And it's very important to communicate early, or even if not early, it's important to communicate. If they can see anything that can be done better for the accessibility, it's very important to listen to them, to decide what you can do. And if you can do it immediately in your design system, it's the best way to do it. So I think make your design system as accessible for the accessibility experts, and the communication are the key points in here.
Hi, thanks for the great talk. Does Figma support localization in any way? Because as you may know, text in different languages has different lengths, and can you predict the scaling of the UI elements while creating the design system?
I must admit, I have no idea, but as far as I know, that community is very wide and very lively. It's very probable that there are some plugins for that, so I would check that. But other than that, I think it's always a good idea to check your designs with, of course, German, because it's the most tricky language and with the longest words. So it's very probable if it works with German, it will work with other languages. So this is my little tip. But other than that, it's worth checking in the plugins. But there's nothing I know for 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There's one more here. Hey.
Okay, first, thank you for the talk. It
Thank
was very
you.
interesting. But what I'm curious about is, when you're creating the design system, do you consider how and if it's possible to actually recreate in the engine? Do you consult any programmers or people that are implementing this later?
Yes. Once we started, it was the first thing. So we were consulting about the naming convention, consulting about how many things will be useful, and of course consulting how much of the documentation part they can check in Figma and how much they need their information on paper. So yes, of course, it's very important to keep those for them as well, because it's not only for us designers, but also should be helpful for the technical people, programmers, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions more? If not, I think we can wrap it up. Thank you very much again, and have a good travel home, probably. Bye.